Hey there, welcome back to the Steel City Sports Podcast, and today we have our Wildcard Wednesday. Now this is a new type of video. I haven't decided yet if we're going to be doing this weekly, but essentially, now that we're 2/3 of the way through the NFL season, I think it's a realistic time to start looking at the playoffs. And the division winners, some of them are up in the air, but we kind of know what teams are going to win what division, so I think it's more interesting to take a look at the wild card spots. So today, we're going to be taking a look at the wild card standings as of Week 12 in both the NFC and the AFC, and I'll just be going over the schedule remaining for the year and talking about how likely I think that these teams currently holding the spots are to actually get into the wild card spot. So let's get started with the NFC. So here is currently how the wild card spot looks in the NFC. So at the first wild card spot, we have the Dallas Cowboys holding a commanding 8-3 record. The wild card 2 spot, we have the Seattle Seahawks holding on to a 6-5 record. And for the last current wild card spot, we have the Minnesota Vikings teetering at 500 at 6-6. In the hunt, we have the Packers at 5-6, the Rams at 5-6, and the Saints at 5-6. So I want to go through each of the teams that are currently holding a wild card spot and take a look specifically at their schedule upcoming and look at how difficult it really is. So here is the current remaining schedule for the Dallas Cowboys. 5 out of these 6 teams are either at 500 or above 500, so I'd say this is actually a relatively difficult schedule, especially for Dallas, who this year, at least it seems that they don't play very well against the above 500 teams. They usually seem to beat up on the bad teams. So Week 13, they play Seattle. That one should probably be a win. Week 14, they play Philly. And their first game against Philadelphia this year, I thought was really good. I called it Game of the Year. But either way, that one, I think at best is a coin toss, if not favoring Philadelphia. Then you go to Buffalo. Buffalo's obviously not an easy out, even though they're struggling this year. They're going to be in any game, especially in Buffalo. Week 16, they go to Miami, which is going to be an interesting matchup because both Dallas and Miami are teams that have been taking flack for, not being able to beat the elite teams and kind of beating up on the bad teams. So, again, I think that should be a fun matchup. Week 17, they play Detroit in Jerry World. That should probably be a win. Then Week 18, they finish off the year playing the only team in this stretch that's below 500. That's the Washington Commanders, which isn't a guaranteed win because, number one, it's a divisional matchup. Those are always tough. And also, Washington has been known to put up some points in some games. I'm not saying they're world beaters, but Sam Howell, I think, has impressed a lot of people, myself included. If you would have told me Sam Howell would lead the league in passing yards, I would have laughed in your face. I mean, that is just outrageous, but he's more than capable this year at least. So overall, it's a difficult schedule, but Dallas is already at 8 wins. So realistically, Dallas only needs to win like 2 or 3 of these games to finish at 10 or 11 wins, which is more than enough to make the playoffs in the NFC as a wild card team. So I'm pretty comfortable at this moment with Dallas making the playoffs. And for the team currently holding the second wild card spot in the NFC, we have the Seattle Seahawks. They're sitting at 6-5. They have a hellacious 3-week stretch coming up here because they go to Dallas to play the Cowboys. I would predict that to be a loss. I think they're like +9 in that game, so they're obviously heavy underdogs in that one. They play tomorrow on Thursday night. Week 14, they go to San Francisco to play the Niners, and I think just the last 2 years, including the playoffs, they're like 4-1 against the Niners. I mean, this current era of the Niners-Seahawks, I guess you'd call it rivalry, the Niners have just owned Seattle. And especially this one being in San Francisco, I see this being I think you can argue a blowout. I think the Niners are going to bludgeon them. Then they get to come back home, but guess who they get to play? My league favorite right now, the Philadelphia Eagles. So that could very realistically be an 0-3 stretch there, which I think could almost guaranteed knock them out of contention for the wild card spot. That'd put them at 6-8. And then the back half of the schedule, it does let up a little bit. You get to play Tennessee, but then you play my Steelers, and then a divisional game against Arizona. So I'm going to say this. I'm not very confident in Seattle. I like their roster a lot. But just where their record sits right now, and for the fact that I genuinely think that they're going to go 0-3 over that stretch, it looks like an outside shot for Seattle just at this current moment. I could be wrong about this. I like a lot of pieces for them, but this is a very rough stretch of their schedule. And the last team currently holding a wild card spot in the NFC is the Minnesota Vikings, sitting at 500, 6-6. Ironically enough, though, I think they actually have the easiest remaining schedule out of the teams we've talked about here in the NFC. However, I think that this stretch of the year isn't going to rely so much on the schedule. It's going to rely on Josh Dobbs, because we've seen these great hot streaks happen across all kinds of sports. You see people comparing this Josh Dobbs run to Lynn's Sanity back when Jeremy Lin got hot with the Knicks like a decade ago. So it just depends on what Josh Dobbs you're getting for the rest of the year. Is he going to go back to that guy that no one really knew about, or is he going to keep up the craziness? I don't know. So I think the Vikings, they're really a tough one to predict. I will say, though, getting their bye here in Week 13 later in the year, I think it's actually good, because Josh Dobbs had by far and away his worst game of the season against the Bears on Monday Night Football, throwing 4 picks. So that's actually, I think, a really strong argument for the Vikings, is that they get their bye after Dobbs has his worst game. It gives them time to, kind of build his confidence back up and kind of clean that up. And like I said, relatively easy schedule. So if I had to put money on it, I would actually... I'd be more confident in the Vikings making the playoffs than I would the Seahawks, just given their schedule. But like I said, who knows what's going to happen with Josh Dobbs. Now taking a look at the current AFC wildcard spots. Currently holding the first wildcard spot is my Pittsburgh Steelers. The second wildcard team is the Cleveland Browns. And the third and last spot in the AFC goes to the Indianapolis Colts. In the hunt, though, we still have the Houston Texans, the Denver Broncos, who are currently the hottest team in the NFL with a 5-game win streak, and the Buffalo Bills, still alive at 500, 6-6. So starting with the current top wild card holder, my Pittsburgh Steelers, I think this is a very easy schedule to close out the year. We only play 3 teams out of the 6 with records at or above 500, so I'm feeling pretty confident. You can call me biased all you want, but I just think, just look at the schedule. I mean, look at some of these teams. Arizona, as much as I like Kyler, they're one of the worst teams in the NFL this year. New England, if we lose to New England, I don't know what I'm probably going to cry if we lose to the Patriots. And then we also play the Jake Browning Bengals, which we just beat up on the Jake Browning Bengals this past week. So there's your 3 wins right there. Gets us to 10 wins. And the other games that we actually play, the playoff teams like Baltimore's probably going to beat us. But for Seattle and Indy, I could very realistically see us beating both those teams. So I don't think a 11-12 win season is out of the question here. And I actually projected the Steelers to win 11 games this year. So I'm feeling pretty confident in the Steelers making the playoffs. So taking a look at the second wildcard team, currently we have the Cleveland Browns, who have, just like the Steelers, a very easy remaining schedule. Only 2 out of the remaining 6 teams are at or above 500. And, I think the magic number for wins to get into the playoffs this year is 10 in the AFC. So if you get to 10 wins, I think you're pretty comfortably into the playoffs. Just look at the schedule. They're already at 7 wins, so you just got to find 3 wins. I can find them pretty easily here. You got Chicago, you got the Jets, and you have the Jake Browning Bengals. Right there, that's 3 you feel like Cleveland can win. And I think they can actually have a chance at beating the Rams as well. So there's 10, 11 wins right there for the Cleveland Browns. But similar to what I said about the Vikings, is you can throw that out the window, because at the end of the day, it comes down to their quarterback. I know that they have statistically the best defense in the NFL, which is why they're at 7-4. But they had Deshaun Watson for a majority of the year. And, despite my problems with Deshaun, I think we can all agree he's a much better player than Dorian Thompson-Robinson. So, I can look at this, I can say all this stuff, but they could fall off a cliff here, just given DTR's play. But I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt just because of how dominant their defense has been, and for the fact that they have some solid pieces on that offense. I think that there's just a clear path here where Cleveland does get the 10 wins, thus actually getting into the playoffs. So I'm pretty confident that they do get in. And the last team currently holding on to a wild card spot is the Indianapolis Colts, sitting at 6-5. And I did my midseason awards video about a week or two ago. Shane Steichen might have to actually enter that Coach of the Year conversation because, you look at all the praise I gave to D'Amico Ryans. Well, at least his stud rookie is playing. Shane Steichen is not dealing with that. You look at the dumpster fire the Colts were last year, and the fact that they're at 6-5 now without their starting quarterback, I think is extremely impressive. So I think Steichen should definitely now be in the conversation for Coach of the Year. As for making the playoffs, though, I don't think it's quite as likely. I think one of these other teams in the hunt are actually going to jump up, whether it is Houston, Denver, or Buffalo. My money would probably be on Houston, but like we said with the Browns, that magic number is probably 10 or 9. I only see 2 layups on here, 2 games where I'd very confidently pick the Colts to win, and that would be the game against Cincinnati, because obviously no Burrow, and the game against Atlanta. All the other games, I could see the Colts realistically losing those games. You could argue about the Raiders, but even if they beat the Raiders, they'd be at 9 wins. So I think it's going to be very, very tight. It always is with that last spot, especially with Houston being that divisional team. I don't feel very comfortable in predicting Indy to make the playoffs, but that's been our Wildcard Wednesday. If you made it this far, I really appreciate you watching this video. Definitely leave a comment. Please leave your thoughts on all this, and please like and subscribe. Thanks.